All right. Always happy to have the next two people on the Sports Card Nation and Sports Card Shop guest line. This is not their first appearance. I might be third or fourth. I'm not counting. Just glad to have both of them back from Card Ladder. Chris and Kristina, welcome.
Hey, John. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us back, John. I just want to start with this. Uh, it must have been 6 or 7 years ago now when I was first kind of looking for hobby podcasts to listen to. I'd been back in the hobby for like 2 or 3 years, but I didn't really, look for podcasts or even think they existed at that time. But yours was probably the first or one of the first I found, and I remember back then, man, the mic was maybe a little lower quality, and it was
I'm trying to forget that stuff, Chris. Thanks for we have nightmares now.
It's cool though, man. It's I've been following your journey from afar since at least back then, and it's great to be back.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny. I've said this on the show. Like, if it wasn't really part of the history and the fabric and the archive of the show, I'd probably delete some of those early episodes. Every once in a while, I'll throw one on just to reminisce or hear how bad it actually was, and I cringe. And like I said, if it wasn't really, if I didn't, if I felt like people wouldn't say, because there are people that actually try to catch up, and I'm like, if I did delete them, which I'd almost like to do, there'd be people be like, "Hey, what happened to episode 1 to 50? I can't find them; they're gone." And, I don't want to answer those, but I appreciate it. Yeah, like anything, you get better at anything you do. You usually do. I think I have a little bit anyway. If anything, in the very least, the audio is a little bit better than in 2018. Which it doesn't sound like that long ago, but 6 years in the hobby, 6 years of content creation actually is a long time. So yeah, it's crazy. It's like here we are. We're in the 300s of episodes, which I know other shows have, but when you're once a week episode, that's a lot of episodes, and so it's crazy, and it makes you realize how old I am as well. So thanks for reminding me there.
No problem.
as well. Well, listen, you guys are in content creation as well, House of Jordans, and then now with crossover. You're not newbies either, as well. So, I mean, we've seen the hobby, all facets of the hobby, right? Different companies, content creation, uh, grow, right? And the hobby's gotten bigger in one way, but smaller with social media in another. Just now, as someone who's been in the hobby a while, both of you, is like kind of your thoughts on where the hobby is today and maybe where it's going to go.
Yeah, I like how you put that. That the number and the size and scope of the hobby's gotten bigger, but we've gotten closer because we have social media, so we can chat and share each other's collections and make content and stuff. So that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I don't know, John. It's I think the right metric that I use to measure the hobby personally is how much fun am I having when I'm collecting cards, and am I enjoying the process? Am I enjoying browsing eBay? Am I enjoying the thrill of finding and chasing new cards? Am I enjoying watching sports? Am I enjoying my hobby relationships and friendships I have with people? And the boring answer is, yeah, I am. And I think it's a good time to be in the hobby. It was good to be in the hobby 2 or 3 years ago. It was good to be in 5 years ago. It was good to be in 8 years ago. For me, I mean, I sometimes have to remind myself of this a little bit, but I remember what it was like before I came back to collecting. I remember, and it just, the quality of life was just not as good. And life, ever since cards became a major part of my life, it just makes my life better every day. It just gives me something that I really enjoy doing. So that's my sense of the hobby right now. I wonder what Kristina's is.
Yeah, I just want to point out that Chris and I started dating before he re-entered the hobby. So when he says that like his life was worse back then, it just always makes me chuckle. But, I think it's interesting. You both said like social media and the way that we interact constantly has definitely brought us all closer. And I know that being able to find cards seems easier now, but it often isn't. As I am personally experiencing a 4-year chase on one card that I cannot find, that has never been sold, which is just ridiculous. But I enjoy the fact that we're a tight knit community. Um, and people look out for each other and they want to help others. And we can't let bad actors impact our view of the larger experience because they're so small, like not just as people but characters. Like but yeah, so I think that like Chris said, like it's been a fun journey, and I wasn't a collector as a kid, so it's been something that I was introduced to as an adult, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. Even some of the moments that like are trying are still, a lot better than other aspects of society and life. So I'm here for the long term.
Yeah, I like both those answers, right? You mentioned bad actors. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, Kristina, right? Well, for every negative or bad story that in the hobby, there's 20 good ones, right? And we don't talk. Sometimes I think we don't talk enough about them. I'm not saying we don't talk about it because we do, but it's that train wreck mentality. Everyone wants to slow down and look at the wreck or make light of it or make it even a bigger deal out of it than it even might be. And, I always, something happens bad and, I'm sure you get a DM or a message. Hey, did you see this? What do you think of that? And I'm like, and I'll give my opinion out. I'm not shy. I'm pretty, but at the same time, I also try to stress to, whoever I'm conversating with or corresponding with, like, this is not a good story, but there's 10, 20 great stories. Someone who's lost their collection due to a natural disaster or something else, a theft, God forbid. And the community, like you said, Kristina, which is a great one, and bands together and will collect some stuff and send it to someone. No questions asked, no strings attached. And sometimes we don't, it's reported, but that negative story is just going to get a lot more traction. I get it. It's like that in regular news and society, like you said, in society as well. And it just, it carries over. But, I always try to make a point for every negative. Let's also, keep in mind there's the good and great outweighs the bad tremendously. That's what makes the hobby great. You're enjoying. That's why we're all talking today and enjoying the hobby. We're enjoying it in the moment, but I've been in it 40 years. It's crazy to say that. So I always think, obviously I'm not going to be around forever. The people, are going to carry the torch forward. But I always worry. I don't want to say worry. Maybe that's too strong a word, but I always concerned for where the hobby's going. Do you think like that, or are you concerned, or you just feel like, I always get every once in a while I get a message, oh, the hobby's dying, or all these bad things people are gonna leave, or the fanatics take over. The hobby was around before me. It's gonna be around after me. It may look different. It may be different. It's not going anywhere. Like the sky is not falling. But that being said, I still am concerned because I want people to have a good experience in the hobby. Kind of your thoughts on like even past today, if you will.
Yeah, I'm gonna second your notion that I have concerns, but they are trumped by, first of all, just the overall joy of collecting that people have. And second of all, that I'm going to do my best to not let them interfere with my enjoyment of collecting, but do take them seriously. But yeah, I have a lot of concerns, honestly. One of the concerns I have is just that I just get concerned that cards overall just might be too expensive, and they just might be overpriced in general. And I look at that, I think that's a trend across a lot of different categories. I think there's a real risk that a lot of quote unquote assets, and I'm not trying to lump cards into an asset category, they're collectibles. But I think there's a lot of things that might be a little overpriced right now. And, you can trace that to inflationary pressure, fiscal policy, monetary policy. You can trace it to a lot of things potentially, but that's one thing I worry about, is that cards are overpriced, and people like myself and a lot of others, we keep collecting, and we want to collect, and we're not going to stop collecting. But I worry that, we might be buying overpriced things, and that might hurt the pocket a little bit down the line if and when things correct. So I think that's a concern. And it's a good one for people to make their own evaluation on, take stock of the historical prices of the stuff they're collecting, compare it to the opportunity cost of what people otherwise would be spending their discretionary income on and their disposable income on, and just see if it makes sense or not. I think everybody can perform that own calculation. It might be different for what some people collect versus what I collect, but that's a concern. Another concern is that what is the collecting experience going to be centered around going forward? Is it going to be continually pushed towards gambling? Is it going to be continually pushed towards, crapshoots where, the hobby experience just becomes a constant roll of the dice to see if I'm going to win big or if I'm going to lose it all today and then try again tomorrow? And I'm not against that necessarily, in moderation. I think it's fun to have a healthy assessment of your risk tolerance that you can do within a reasonable budget. And I think everybody's an individual who can make that determination for themselves. But I just wonder, are we being marketed and siphoned and pushed into a collecting experience that's forgetting about all the reasons why we love collecting? And it's being geared instead towards like, hey, come empty your wallet on this slot machine, and maybe you hit big, but you're probably not going to. And over the long term, you're definitely going to lose, but hey, let's do it that way. I mean, that's just not why I got into the hobby. It kind of can distract us from collecting, I think. And I would always, like, if anybody came to me, I'd just say, the reason why I love the hobby, and maybe this isn't why everybody loves it, but I love the art of collecting. I love acquiring cards. I love reassessing my collection. I love upgrading it, downgrading it, trading, buying, selling. I just love the whole curation process. And that's a lot of fun, and it can be very rewarding. And so, that's where I would say we should be focusing the hobby messaging on is the joy of collecting. But there's two things that I gave that are concerns of mine. Now I'll let Kristina maybe give a few.
I like to say that I'm a realist with optimistic tendencies, John. So I see what's happening, and I have concerns, but I think that the majority of the hobby are just, true collectors who don't really get involved with the politics and the marketing that people try to ploy onto us. I think all of us are a little bit geeky and OCD, and that's why we collect, and that's why we like to we have our lanes, and we like to knock those items off of our list when we're collecting, or discover new things. And I think that the hobby is made up of a lot more intelligent people than some companies would like to believe, and those people aren't going to do something that's bad for them and their families in the long term. So hopefully, we're not going to go too far down this gambling road. But, you know, I think that it's easy to get greedy when, especially like bottom lines and profit and going public and all these other things that are happening for these boards and these companies are on the board to play. But I can't control that. Neither can you guys, obviously. So I'm just going to, you know, do what I like about the hobby, kind of ignore the rest. You know, it's not for me. Like, I'm not that person. So I'm just going to go over here and do what I love and offer solutions and a space for people who also love collecting the way that I do, and offer that community on this other side of the hobby and kind of let them go do them. And if someone wants to do it, that's cool. Like, go have fun. But, you know, I know that people are a lot smarter than others like to think. So, yeah, that's where I am. Like, my concerns and your concerns, like, are obviously valid, but like my concerns are more, you know, making sure this space is around for all of us when we're older, and for the next generation and generations beyond that, to enjoy the aspect of collecting cards.
Yeah, well said. Both great points on both accounts. You know, you mentioned, Chris, about the affordability, right? I started in 1979 when packs were 25 cents, right? It's crazy even to say that. Like, even though I lived it, even like just talking about it, those days are obviously in the rear view mirror. And you know, I'm sure you feel the same way. You see kids at a show enjoying the hobby, you know, carrying a Zion case with $40,000 of inventory in it. But whatever, I'm kidding. But you know, I all joking aside, like seeing kids enjoying the hobby, however they're doing it, right? Whether it's their collection's that big or they're starting small. That I started as a 7-year-old, right? I believe like that bodes well for the hobby if you have young folks, you know, enjoying it or starting early. Like I think you're more apt to stay with it or return to it when you start young than if you just come in and you're 23, 24 years old. You may get out quicker. I mean, everyone's different. I don't want to paint with a broad brush.
I was gonna say,
yeah, go ahead.
I got in after college, like literally like 2 weeks after we graduated.
Yeah.
And I'm here for the long term.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm glad you are, but I think it's maybe not for you, Christine, but I think it would be an easier exit for some that are kind of late entrants. Not that they'll use that out, but I think when you're in it at a young age, you there's that nostalgia bond. There's that memory lane thing that takes you back. Like even talking about buying 25-cent packs in 1979, and I laugh about that, but you know, here I am in 2024 and I'm still around and still doing it. Right. And, but you know, that's a great point, Chris, about the affordability, right? Maybe people getting scared off like this. I can't do this hobby. You know, but I always say like, even if like, you know, we can get into the whole fanatics thing. It's a horse that's been beaten quite a bit, but even if you don't like that, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in Topps' backyard, the original Topps, if you will. I'm a fan, but you know, having that much market share or market control, I don't necessarily think that bodes well. I like to see, I think more people producing stuff, you know, brings out competition, brings out better products. I'll always be, and that's not a cards thing. That's I think just in general in any kind of business or product. We're obviously talking about cards, and I've had people. I'm sure you've heard it. Like, how am I going to afford this hobby? Like, you know, a box, this new product, $8,000 a box, $20,000 a box, and I just say, you know, you don't have to buy those products, and you don't even have to buy wax or packs. You can buy cards that have already been produced, and as someone who's heavy vintage, as in my case, that's exactly really what I do. So if you don't like one aspect of the hobby, you don't have to leave. You could just do hobby a different way and make it affordable, whatever your budget might be. And everyone might have a different budget. Some people are going to have more discretionary income than others. And so I always, when someone tells me that, I get where they're coming from, but I also want to point out to those folks, like, I hear you, but there are other ways to hobby on whatever budget you're on. It's still make it enjoyable. And, and that's, like you said, Kristina, that's what I do. And you can still do it. So you don't have to buy the newfangled product. You can buy a card that's already been, produced and out in on the secondary market and enjoy it just the same. Maybe you didn't pull from a pack, but that's okay too. And so, I like both what you said, and I always try to, when I get those kind of messages, I always make a point to, I'm not saying they don't have a point, but there's other ways. There's other ways to enjoy the hobby. You don't have to, get frustrated and leave. I mean, unless you're really, really at that point, everyone has to make that decision for themselves. Card Ladder, you started that. It's one of the leaders in the analytics and industry. Acquired almost 3 years ago now, coming up on the 3-year anniversary. Speaking of that, like, now almost 3 years in since the acquisition, how has it changed? How you do it, what you do, your view on it.
Kristina, why don't you
It
go
hasn't
first?
changed anything, John.
Okay.
So Card Ladder operates as a completely individual, separate company. We still operate as a small business. You know, Chris, Josh, myself, and Nick, we all just we do what we do every day. No one takes days off still. We work every night still. And we still are super passionate about what we're bringing to our members and to the hobby community. We take pride in our work, and I think that passion and pride show. Like I said, we're here for the long term. We're collectors. We're not going anywhere, and we want to make sure that people have accurate, transparent data so that they can make the right decisions for themselves. And it's just a tool to help everyone in the hobby, because we do have a free site as well. Everyone, so that they can do what's right for them and their family, and however you think of collecting, whether it's discretionary, hobby, investment, however you want to think about it, we give you data so that you can make the best informed decisions possible. I am thankful that Nat Turner has let us run where we see fit. We're kind of, I don't want to say we're Doug from Up, where we're squirrel and then we run over that way, but allowing us to continue the way that we yeah,
Nice Up reference.
yeah, thanks. It's one of my
See,
favorite.
my son's 24, so I actually never seen that movie.
Okay.
But I'm sure plenty out there listening know exactly what you're talking. But I get the general. I get the. Go ahead.
We were able to pivot as a small company to this day when a member or a hobby community member says something to us about how this would help, or I need X. We're able to quickly solve it and get things done in the business that larger companies can't, because there's checks that have to be made, or someone has to go check with this person or this team, and instead it's just us talking to each other and being okay, how do we do this, and what's in the best interest of the hobby, which is always the last question we ask ourselves and each other when we're making business decisions. And I think that shows, and that's why Card Ladder has become such a trusted brand in the industry, not just by hobbyists themselves, but by other companies as well too, because they see that we're here to help the longevity of the hobby and the industry, and we're not going to cash out or do something that's not in the best interest of I don't want to talk and sling mud, but like we're here for the right reasons. I'll just end it at that.
Well, yeah, I'll toot your horn for you, Kristina. Like, when you're acquired, right, you could have exited stage left, right, but you're passionate about it. You love what you do, even though it's a grind. Let's keep it real, right? It's work. That's I don't think people realize too, like the work that goes involved. Like you say, it's late nights and staying up and maybe not getting as much sleep as you planned on or hope for, right? So you could have took the easy road out if that was the choice that you made. So anyone that thinks that or questions that, they don't know what you're about or who you are, and that's gonna happen. There's That's just comes, it's par for the course, comes with the territory. So I think the proof's in the pudding, right? That you're still doing it even after the 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. I think that speaks volumes to work ethic, care, passion, dedication. I'm running out of adjectives, but I think people get the idea. I have the advantage of knowing you may be a little bit different than probably many of the listeners. Maybe not all of them, but many of them. So I get it. But you could have easily, when that happens, said, okay, and let's go do this now or do something else or even leave the hobby entirely, right? We've seen that we've seen that happen as well, and that's not the case here. So while I know you're trying to, not not pat yourself on the back, I'll do it for you because I know that's the facts and that's the case here. So and I think a good percentage of people understand that and get it, but and you can't worry about the ones that don't. That is what it's going to be. So, Chris,
Yeah.
anything you
Well
know,
said, John.
if you want to add anything to that, or
Just a little bit. I thought Kristina did a great job, and John, I couldn't have said it any better than you just did. Honestly, I really feels like you've been looking over our shoulders to
well,
put
it's listen. I'm not as many shows as you, but like you're there. Like shows are fun. I'm not here to tell you as someone who sets up at them, as someone who goes to them, as just the consumer. But there also can be a grind, especially when you're behind a kiosk or a booth, um, and it's fun and it's a grind at the same time. And yes, it can be both. I've had someone argue with me; it's got to be one or the other, and I'll argue that till it's blue in the face. Like when I set up a show as a dealer. It's fun and it's a grind. It's both. If it ever becomes just a grind but not fun, that's when I probably stop doing it. So, I'm a credit where credit's due. Like, and you're there, at the show answering great questions, answering probably not so great questions, and you do it. I've never heard anyone say, man, Chris was rude or Kristina was rude. Never. And those conversations come up about other people that, I'm not going to mention, but never with you guys. Now, maybe competition or, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about too, is you guys were the first or one of the early ones that did this sort of thing. And like anything in the hobby, right? Copycats come along. I'm not going to give any free pub and mention names, right? And when you're at the top, right, and it's easy to have the ones that aren't at the top to throw mud or take shots, haters, if you will, you want to call them that. I'll use that term, right? Talk about the difficulty of that, like and I generally think that stuff. I've said this on my show, just as a general statement. I think that kind of stuff comes from people who are generally unhappy with their own standing, and so it's easy to take a cheap shot. It makes them feel better about themselves, at least temporarily, and it's just so easy to do behind a keyboard or a phone, and rather than to someone's directly. How do you? I know you. I think that I'll answer the question. You're almost too busy to like worry about it necessarily, but how much does it really bother you, and how do you sort of navigate? I call them potholes in the road. How do you navigate around those, if you will?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a part of, I think, a lot of people's collectors' experiences, whether they work in the industry, whether they represent or are loyal to a particular company or brand, or whether they're just an account on social media, having a voice and people disagree with them and then project intentions or motivations onto them and stuff. And, it's part and parcel of the social media experience. It's part of the human experience. But that's a great topic. But I just want to say one thing before the potholes, which you alluded to, which is that, the sort of the idea of a analytics company or, a sales database, a price guide, a collection tool. And I just want to tip the hat to our predecessors, because we were one of the earlier software applications, but there are a lot of great people and companies who paved the path and who have done similar things and continue to do great things. And one of them obviously is Dr. Beckett, who to me is the first face on the hobby's Mount Rushmore. It's him and Jefferson Burdick. And I think Jefferson Burdick sort of invented the idea of the set, which I think is incredibly important and changed the trajectory of sports cards forever and made them very special in a way that they weren't going to be without the idea of the set. And then you have Dr. Beckett, who, for my money, not only did he sort of pioneer not the concept of the price guide, but a way of doing a price guide and the methodological assumptions that he made and his decision to seek to reflect the market rather than to guide it or to predict it. I think that was such an important and integrity-laden decision that was huge. So I think he was certainly a pioneer at the least in creating price tracking, which is a baton that we've picked up. And then he was also a pioneer in hobby content. I think almost even more so. It's weird to talk about him as a content creator because the price guide is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Dr. Beckett. But he was at the forefront of content, of articles, editorials, letters to the editor, showcases of super collectors. He was at the forefront of all that, and he was doing it with a circulation of multiple sports editions, NFL, MLB, NBA, that had millions of monthly copies in circulation. I mean, no one's done it to the level or the extent that he was doing it 20, 30 years ago. And I just think without him and without that, and also a tip of the hat to his contemporaries as well. There were more than just Beckett, and they were also innovating and contributing to that culture, that content as well. But I shudder to imagine where would the hobby be if he hadn't shepherded us through the junk wax era of the 80s, which I say affectionately, through the shiny parallel induced era of the 90s, through the addition of the memorabilia and the autograph cards and the proliferation of those in the 2000s. I have no idea where we would be right now if he wasn't the guiding hand and if he didn't bring to the table his manner of ethics and statistical approaches and professorial style. It's almost unfathomable to wonder where we would be without him. So we're just a pinky on the skeleton of what Dr. Beckett architected in terms of content and price guides and just reflecting the hobby community. But he is certainly a predecessor and somebody that I look to as a model and as well as his contemporaries too, that were publishing and producing back then. And even after Beckett, when they made their transition in the 2000s to being more digital oriented and ramping up the online aspect of things, then you also had, Vintage Card Prices, VCP, and several other entities that were doing price tracking and reporting on sales data, going back, that's, in the 2000s, they were doing that. And that predates us by, 10 to 15-ish years. So there's just a lot of important people who paved the way and who did great jobs and who are really important figures and figureheads in the industry. And so, all right, so having said that, now on the topic of potholes, which is a great one, because like I was saying, I think every collector and content creator and participant in the hobby, they deal with it on some level. If people have a disagreement, it can get heated and it can involve, the stakes can feel really high because like certain people really believe in this card and other people really believe in that card, or some people, really believe the industry should look like this and other people really believe it should look like that. And, it can become personal and it can become about motivations. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's okay. It's what's going to happen. People are going to argue. They're going to get upset at each other. They're going to fire some shots. Hopefully at the end of the day, everybody who's, when cooler heads prevail, people calm down a little bit, they can get back on the same page and have some mutual respect going for each other. But then, the other side of the coin too is that this is a hobby. Occasionally people do need to blow off steam. Occasionally people do observe things that are out of whack or that somebody might be up to no good. And, it takes balls to call that stuff out, because there can be a lot of blowback. You can get a lot of flack. Now, sometimes people mess up, and they call out the wrong thing or they didn't have the full facts straight. And that's okay. I think we should have a tolerance for people to make mistakes or to get something wrong, give them a chance to correct the record, give them a chance to get it right. But, we also have to sort of take the perspective that, think about Ben Simmons. All right. Ben Simmons is a guy who had a nice start in Philadelphia and then it went awful. And on the Philadelphia 76ers. And then he kind of forced his way out of the team. People were wondering, is he faking his injury? Is he not? The last time Ben Simmons rolled into Philadelphia to play a game, there was hundreds of people waiting outside the bus just booing him, calling him every name in the book. They were throwing bottles at him. It was vicious. This is the life for people who have a public facing dimension to their persona. And when you're in the public sphere, when you're acting as a public figure, this is going to come with the territory. People are going to be tough. People are going to blow off steam. People are going to have harsh words. And I just think it's actually incumbent upon the recipient of the criticism to take it seriously. I think almost everybody out there in the world has something worthwhile to say. There are some people who are just assholes, but almost everybody has something worth listening to. So if somebody's criticizing me, for example, and even if it's sharp and it's, it's mean and it's tough, I still want to listen to it, because you know what? Maybe this person's saying what 100 other people are thinking, and maybe they're not putting it as politely as they could, but I could still learn something from this. There might be something there that I can actually take and make myself a better person from it. So let me listen to it and take it seriously, even though it stings. But let me just listen to it, take it seriously, see if I can learn from it. And then secondarily, even if I can't, even if it's just kind of an unfair criticism, somebody's just kind of, being tough and slinging some mud, let them. You kind of pointed out that sometimes people are, it's a reflection of their own unhappiness, which could be the case. Sometimes there's a morsel of truth in there, but even if there isn't, people need to vent. People need to blow off some steam. I think the best thing you can do as a recipient of that is just try to have empathy. You have to be careful too, just because sometimes you have to set the record straight. If somebody is saying something untrue about you or something unfair about you, and then other people read it and then they don't know the full context, then sometimes you have to go out and you have to set the record straight, and that can be annoying and it takes effort. But that's just part of life. Sometimes you have to go out there and you have to stand up for yourself. But other times, part of life is just saying, hey, this is my fellow human being. They might be going through something. They also might have a point. let me take it seriously, but let me not internalize it too much. It's not going to bother me, but let him say it, and let's see if we can learn something from it. At the end of the day, have some empathy and compassion for people who, might be having a hard time, or they might be blowing up steam, or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of how I look at potholes, John.
Yeah, it's a great point you made too. With I like what you said. Like, hey, I'll listen, and maybe I can learn something in the process. And you use a word that I think is important, like personal. If someone can avoid making it personal, like you can be critical without making it personal, right? You can say, hey, I don't like when you did this, or I don't agree when you did that. But when you resort to name calling or labeling and other things like that, I think that's where the line gets crossed. That's where, like you said, I'm kind of like you. Like I've had, hey, I didn't like that new segment you did, or the old segment you did. It's kind of past its expiration date, right? If you come at it with tact, I'm more apt to listen to you than if you just say, John, you're stupid and that segment sucks too, right? You know what I mean? Because it comes from an animosity place, like
Right.
where the first thing I'm like, is he really critiquing the something, or he just doesn't like me because I'm ugly? Is it as simple as that, or should I really take this point? But the point gets lost in the personal aspect of it. If you use tact, I know I spoke to you even before we started recording about, we do double episodes now with this show in the interview guests to make them shorter and more consumable. That was from people saying, hey, John, love the show, but long, like a little bit long, and it was something that, like I told you, I was thinking about doing, but those people who used tact and said that, it made that decision easier, and I think it was a good one. And I think we're more apt to listen to people when they use tact than when they just cross the line right out the gate, and you're a jerk, and who knows what else. And I think we've all dealt with it, some more than others, obviously, and like you said, you can't lose sleep about it. You just gotta do what you think is the best. You're not going to win the whole room, right? I know that from my coaching days as a high school football coach and baseball coach. Like, you could go undefeated, but there's going to be the parents whose kids didn't play as much as they thought, and they're still going to dislike you, even though they got a big trophy in their son's room, right, or daughter's room. So you just knowing that's half the battle, and but like you said, you should always try to be open to feedback as long as it comes from a respectful place with tact. And I think I think that says a lot about you that you said that. Someone else might have answered that a different way, or hey, I don't listen to them. I block out all the white noise. And sometimes that's not a wrong answer either. But the fact that you said, hey, I don't shut the door. I maybe there's something I can learn, even though the message may not be great. Maybe there's something I can take from it. And I think that says a lot about both of you. That's the fact, and I appreciate that. Right. So, speaking of the grind, right? I talked about you're making the rounds at the shows. Talk about the difficulties of that. Your family, folks. I know right now you're in Chicago with family, but talk about the grind of doing shows. I think people don't realize that. They think a show is just all fun and games, and it is fun. It is fun. I'm not, as someone that does them, like I said, on both sides of the table as a content creator, it's for sure fun. But there's also a lot of work that goes into it. Travel, not as much sleep, always on the go. You lose what day it is. I don't even know what day today is. Let me look at my phone and see. Right. Let me look at my phone and see where I got to be and what time and those sort of things. I don't think people who don't, and I'll stick up for them. Maybe they could just because they don't do that, they don't understand it. It's not that they're naive; they just don't get how that process works. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to do surgery, so I can't speak to that, right? But talk about the grind and some of the difficulties with the travel, setting up, representing content creation, representing Card Ladder, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so preparing to go to a show starts at least 4 months before the show. For the national, it's a lot sooner. Like the national prep starts like now for next summer. And that is because we're a small team and we have to continue operating and running Card Ladder while we're at shows. So we have an amazing content director, and he starts putting together things about 4 months before a large show to prep his work for content to come out during the show and after the show about what we were doing there. Or who we were talking to there. And then we have to organize hotels and travel and booth space. We also have to pack up our entire offices and bring them with us to the show and set them up in hotel rooms so that, you talked about the grind, John, like we're at the show talking to people and answering questions, giving out things for giveaways and whatever, and that's during show hours. So we're pulling double duty during shows as well, because after that we're running out of the convention center trying to grab something to eat quick and then going up to the hotel office and then we're sitting down to review comps and sales and make sure we're answering customer feedback that comes in online. Because it's not just we're talking to customers during the day, we're also talking to them at night who might not be at the show or who need assistance. And we're answering DMs throughout the entire show to help people. And then we're staying up until about 3 a.m. getting those sales reviewed so that everyone wakes up in the morning to go to the show with accurate comps and accurate data so that they can make the best informed decisions. And we're waking up with them as well so that we could be at our booth and there to answer questions or to do whatever we have to do on the agenda that day, including meetings and things as well with other companies or other people. So it's a lot. Like, honestly, it takes me like personally to like for after a big show, it takes me about 2 weeks to just like get back on my normal schedule of like I'm on top of my emails, I'm on top of the DMs, I'm on top of the customer service because like everything kind of falls like secondary to a large show like the national. So it's exhausting. But I have a great team and the guys all pull their weight so that, I can wake up late one morning if I had like, a crazy day the day before.
I just got to stop right there. Kristina's being a little too humble. I mean, she is the sled dog pulling the sled when it comes to the shows, when it comes to setting them up, when it comes to, preparing the booth, ordering the pieces that come in, assembling it when it gets there, interfacing with all the different people that need to be interfaced with to make sure we get our booth and that we're set up in the right spot. She oftentimes is planning the whole trip. I mean, all the way down to the accommodations. And then she is the one who's always anchoring our booth. I mean, Josh, myself, and Nick would go nuts if we had to sit in that booth all day. We get to walk around and buy cards and talk to friends and dealers.
Chris, I love you. I love you. I am going to attest to that because whenever I come by, it's always Kristina. You're there sometimes. I'm not going to throw you under the bus, but I think she's clocking more hours.
Oh, 100%. That's why I just said she did a great job explaining it. But I just wanted to add on that, like, she doesn't take a break during the whole time. It's a very stressful environment. It all falls on her shoulders. We've never had anything but a very successful show, because we're in great hands when we're in her hands for that stuff. But just so she doesn't downplay herself too much there, I mean, she is the star of the show, no pun intended.
Thank you. But I will say, this past national, like, Josh one day was like, hey, sleep in tomorrow. I will cover the booth in the morning because you need, like, you're running on fumes. And so my team does step up for me, is all I want to say. Like, they are really good. The guys are really good. Of like Chris being like, why don't you go walk around like for like an hour or two? I got this. Like, I'll stay here. So like it's taken us a few years, but they can read when I'm at my breaking point. And right before I get there, John, they'll step in and be like, hey, let's not have a Kristina panic attack or a freak out stress moment. You step away. We got this. So, yeah, I have a great team that supports me and recognizes the work that I put in. And therefore, like, it's been, knock on wood, successful shows thus far.
Yeah, and it's great. Like you're there for each other. It's a well-oiled machine, even though it's a grind and tough and has its moments, right? You know, you can depend on the person you work with or work, behind you, or everyone's willing to kind of pitch in and do what it takes to make it happen, or relieve someone else to give them a break so they can recharge and replenish. And that's not always the case, and sometimes that's why maybe someone doesn't make it or they burn out. How many shows how many shows are you do? I know it changes every year. We got new shows popping up every year. Approximately how many weekends would you say are you on the road?
So we go to shows but don't always set up at them. And a lot of that is for meetings, or just like to walk around and do some like branding stuff, like talking to dealers, getting people set up on Card Ladder when we can help in person. But setting up and like doing a full booth is kind of rare for us, due to the fact that the show hours are very long and we have to work every night. So we really save that for the large shows, and that's like 2 to 3 a year that we'll set up at the large shows. The Nationals always one of them. But like, we live in Dallas during the basketball season. So we're at those shows. We also travel. So we were just at the Minneapolis show this past month in September. We're planning to go to the Orlando show at the beginning of November. So like, there are things like that where we'll go to shows and walk around and talk to people, have meetings, but not full setup. So those shows are my favorite because I get to actually experience the show floor, versus when we have booths and setup. I'm pretty much stuck at the booth. And if I want to see someone, I better message them and tell them to come find me.
Yes, we're talking about the grind and the work and effort that goes into pulling all this together, right? And you guys do a great job. Like you said, you gave your team credit, which again illustrates the kind of folks both of you are. How has like this rise, through the hobby? Like you were card collectors before all this too, and we're all here on this show because we collect cards. How has it changed, sort of how you hobby? I imagine it has. I mean, even I don't do nearly as much as you guys do, but even the content creation has cut into the time that I can click on a selling platform and try to find a card or buy something, or go to a show that I'm not set up at and try to get cards at. Talk about the different, how it's changed how you hobby and collect.
You mean kind of just like working in the industry, how that has had an impact?
Yeah, and just you're with Card Ladder and content creation, you got to put the time into that. And obviously it's like a pie, right, Chris?
Yes.
You can't make it necessarily bigger. You just have to allot, well, how many slices and who gets, what gets what slice.
Yeah.
That more or less along those lines.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. One of the things that got sliced right away was how much time we put into preparing for podcasts. So back when we were doing the House of Jordans podcast, which like we had to stop when we started doing Card Ladder, especially at that time when we were like all over the place. I was supposed to be studying for the bar. Kristina was working another job, and then we were trying to start this company too. And but so we just didn't have time. But so one of the things we did was like for the House of Jordans podcast, I mean, we would have like a 10 to 15 page script just full of notes and research that we would consult. And, the time to be able to do that just went away. Like the time spent, the mental effort spent like researching and preparing had to go into building and researching for the business. So what we did is a pretty good hack, I think, at the end of the day, for content, so we could keep like a weekly piece of content coming out. I just started putting out a call for questions. So that started on Instagram about 4.5 years ago. Josh and I and Kristina started doing like a live show, and we would just go live late on Friday night. But all day during Friday, I'd put a call for questions on Instagram. To anybody who sees this, if you have topics, what's on your mind as a collector, what are things that are bothering you? What are things that you're happy about? What's a sports card topic that you'd like to hear discussed a little bit? And people would just flood them in. And they do now they do the work for the show. Now my time preparing for a podcast is just limited to I have to take about an hour right before the show starts. I just have to collect all the topics and the questions, just collect them, put them all into a document, and then just kind of go into the show and read.
But in your credit too, Chris and Kristina and Josh, I know he's not on screen, but it's easy, but it's also interactive, right? It's making people part of the show.
Yes.
And it's something I don't do. I think I do a little bit of it, not on anywhere on that level that you just talked about. There's definitely more of a ceiling even for me to do that. I do a Q&A with Hobby Quick Hits, but it's not live. So I like just hit record whenever I want to record the episode. Take those questions like you mentioned and do it. And I think, let's be real, it's easier to do a tape segment than to do a live segment, right? Because if I don't like something or, let me take two on that one, right? When you're doing it live, like any show that's live, there is no take two. Everyone sees it. Right. You can't, so, feather in your hat, right, is being interactive, whether it's to make you doing the show easy or not, it's also making people more involved in the show and feel part of the show. And that's a good thing. And something I try to do a little bit more of. I definitely have a ways to go. And I do it when I do it on the Q&A with Hobby Quick Hits. I'm not doing it live, so it's the degree of difficulty goes down even with what I do. But I wanted to throw that in there and
sure.
Give you some proper credit there. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is true. The pressure is higher when you're doing it live, and inevitably when you do things live, you'll say something stupid. I mean, I've done it a million times, so you just kind of hope, we'll just roll with the punches here. But, I would ideally, I'd like to be more in a content space like how you approach it, which is you bring in guests, you have segments that get thought. I'm sure you're thinking about them throughout the week as you're sort of crafting your show and ideas are coming to you.
I have to write them down, Chris, because at my age, if I don't write it down, it's gone. And it might never, ever come back. So I'm a notes guy. I'm more of a notes guy as an older person than when I was younger and could remember stuff.
Sure.
So now I have to, I write stuff down that I'm like, I wrote that down. I'm like, yeah, because I need to. Otherwise, it's going to be lost for either a while or potentially forever. So, I always have to do that. People say, what are you writing now? And I'm like, something so I don't forget.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I do this. I'm taking notes as we're talking right now, just in case you say something or Kristina says something. I want to go back to it. I literally am writing stuff down right now. So because
Yeah.
that's just it's a great, it's a great shortcut to
No,
it frees your
it's a
brain
great tool. It's a great tool. Like, you don't have to, like, people say, oh, you're writing it. You don't have to like, people sometimes it comes across as like, oh, you need to write it down. No, I want to write it down. I don't need to write it down. Like, I want to write it down.
Yep.
Maybe there's a little need for me at my, with the memory and stuff that when you get in your 50s. So, but no, I think it's good. It's all that attention to detail. You want to be thorough, make sure you don't miss something, right? Again, I think that speaks to the person and their work ethic and all that stuff. So, but how about collecting wise? Like, has it changed sort of, how you look at what interests you, or not necessarily?
I think that there are avenues where it's like what we do and how focused in we are and learning new products constantly has helped to navigate some areas that I may not have traversed there myself as a collector. And then it's also, like you mentioned, like you don't always have the time to go on all the marketplace platforms to check for cards. So I have had that problem as well. And luckily, people surprisingly like me, I guess, where they will tell me when a card that they think I'll be interested in. Yes, I'm surprised when people do this. Well, like they'll be like, "Hey, I just saw this card that someone pulled on a break of this no-name player that I know you collect." And then I'll go message that person immediately and be able to swipe that card up quick. And then, there are the downfalls of publicly collecting a player or someone, though, as well, where someone may know that you collect this, so they will then charge you, 5 times what they paid for it when they picked it up for the purpose of selling it to you. So, which I've had happen a couple times to me as well, where it's like, well, if I want this card, this is what their price is, because they maybe picked it up for $200, but they're okay with sitting on it until I'm super desperate and I'm willing to pay to get it into my PC.
It's a double-edged sword. It's a
For
double-edged
sure.
sword.
Yeah, it definitely is. But like we said earlier, the people who are looking out for you far outweigh the people who will take advantage of you. So like I get a lot of DMs from amazing people who help me with my collection. And I'm always grateful to them. Like, for example, I had so I'm collecting a 2020 Prism Rainbow of Maxi Kleba. I had 2 cards that I needed left: the Fast Break Bronze out of 20 and the Neon Green out of 5. Someone messaged me. He was a 16-year-old kid from Australia who said he was in his hobby shop when another kid pulled the bronze out of 20. And he was like, I got his contact information for you. I gave him your contact information. Like, here is the details. Like, I saw this card be pulled in shop and I immediately thought of you. Like, how if I wasn't active and like super vocal about this Prism Rainbow, how would I have gotten that card, right? Like it would have been like the kid would have been like, oh, out of 20, cool, but who's gonna collect this guy? Like, he doesn't start for the Mavericks. He was undrafted. He's in his 4th year playing basketball. Like, no one wants this card. But because this person listens to the crossover, this kid knew I wanted that card. So he quickly put me in contact with this other guy, and I was able to secure it for my collection. Which, now that I already brought it up, let me just make a public announcement to all of your followers. John, I am 1 card away from the 2020 Prism Rainbow of Maxi Kleba. I am missing the Fast Break Neon Green out of 5. If anyone has any leads on this card, which is never sold publicly, and I've been watching for 4 years now, please contact me at Kristina's PC on Instagram. One word, Kristinas PC on Instagram, on Twitter. Please contact me. I am dying to finish this rainbow. I've talked to Panini many times at shows, and they guarantee that this one card has made it into packs, and they don't know where it is either. So if anyone could help me finish this rainbow, there are 46 parallels in the 2020 Prism product. I have 45 of them, and I just need this last neon green out of 5. Okay, I'm done.
Let's go, folks. Help Kristina out. Be fair. Don't price gouge. Just think of the honor. You get to be the person that finishes that rainbow. It's like an assist, right? You get this. Yeah. She gets the slam dunk it, and you get the alley-oop it to her. And that would be an awesome. That's a great story too with the kid in Australia, right? That's going back to the hobby becomes a smaller place, even though Australia, right? This is hobby is a worldwide thing. Like even calling the show like Sports Card Nation, like it's more than it's world, right? And there's a perfect example all the way from Australia, and it wasn't even the person that pulled the card. He just happened to witness it, and that one thing led to another, and you added that card in that hunt to complete that journey. That's the beautiful stories that sometimes we don't talk about enough or think about even enough. So we got to get that last. We got to get you someone out there either has the card, knows someone that has the card. Maybe this hasn't been pulled yet, and it gets pulled, and they remember this. But let's get the last card. But that's a great story to kind of close on too, because that's the beautiful things about the hobby is the community. Even with me, I'll make this story short. I was on the hunt for a Tom Seaver rookie in Cleveland. I was actually in hunt for it the year before, but he had just passed away. They did a statue at Citi Field, so the prices were a little bit higher and the comps are a little bit higher than I wanted to go for it. That kind of calmed down. And so, but a lot of people knew I was looking for that card. So I was getting DMs or text, John, it's at this table. It's a PSA this, and it's this much. And like, I'm just thinking, man, people are taking time out of their day. They're at the National, right? The greatest show in the hobby, and they're stopping and texting or DM me, thinking about me, right? Or even whether that takes 10 seconds or 2 minutes, the fact that anyone cares enough about you or thinks enough about you to do that. Really, it even hits home more than acquiring the card, is that somebody, cares enough about you to help you out. And I've done, it's reciprocal. I've done that, and I'm sure you have as well done that. And that's the hobby's the people. What is the tagline of the show for so long now, and it really kind of rings true, and it's the beautiful part of hobby, and it's why we enjoy it, even though it can be a grind sometimes. It's why we're still here, still going and having fun with it. So I always give the guests the kind of the final word. Give out any social medias, websites, anything you want to share with people. I know you gave out your email so you can get your last Cleveland card, but even for Card Ladder, the crossover, give out any of that stuff you want to share as well.
Kristina?
Well, I was waiting for you. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Or I could. Yes. Well, you're better at remembering all the socials than me.
Contact us on social, Card Ladder, one word, on TikTok, Twitter /X, Instagram. You can reach us at contact@cardladder.com. I'll answer, myself or Josh will answer all of your messages. You'll talk to us. Like, that's one thing we pride ourselves on, is that when you reach out, you talk to us and we can solve the problem or try our hardest before we tag the other one in. My Instagram and Twitter /X is Kristina's PC, one word, Kristinas PC. Crossovers are Friday nights. We're about to switch the times because daylight savings is coming up, so look out for that. You can reach Chris at Chris_HOJ. Josh is at Cardboard Chronicles. Nick is at Stiff Arm Wax. Like, you can reach us at Card Ladder as well. Yeah, just feel free to reach out. We're always reactive to messages.
Yeah, and you did a great, like, remembering all those handles, and like that's great. Chris wasn't kidding when he said that. Like,
Yeah.
well, listen. In the very least, let's get Kristina that last card and put a bow tie on that thing, and that would be really cool, and obviously another great hobby story to add to the collection as well. Well, I say this all the time with you guys, Chris, Kristina, keep up the great work. I know the work that goes into it. You know, we use the word work. Sometimes we throw that around too easily, but not in your case. You guys are really, putting in the effort, all with a smile on your face. And I couldn't do what you do, but if I did, I probably would be a lot grumpier than you are. Let's put it that way. So you do it, and every time, like I said, I've seen you at the shows, whether it be the National or somewhere else. You're always pleasant, and both of you, and it's not as easy to do as people think it is. And so I want to give you kudos there. So keep it up. We'll have you back. I don't remember. I think it's been over a year since you're out, maybe close to 2 years. Well, let's do it a little bit. Next time you come back, we won't wait as long. So, but thanks.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks for having us, John. And anytime you want to talk to us, you know that we will make it happen. It's been an honor to come back.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.